All right.
Hello, everyone.
We'll give people maybe another 30 seconds to get in, hooked up, and ready to rock.
Sounds great. We've got one more coming in right here.
And should I go ahead and screen share, Bree, or?
Yes, whatever you'd like to do. We'll run through some intros as well. So if you want that in the background, that's totally fine too.
Let me see, just make sure I got, okay, perfect. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right, perfect. I'll wait till you get through the intros. I just want to make sure it's good.
Great. All right, Ryan, it looks like everyone's in.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming to this presentation of the Developing Partner section. A couple of announcements before we get started. One is that the next substantive program of the DPS is going to be on September 10th at 11 Eastern. That's going to be on litigation financing. We're going to have two representatives of some of the better, more prominent and well-known litigation finance companies answer your questions about how the process works, when it can be advantageous, why your clients might actually want to do it, and ooh, gross, what is this? Which a lot of people have to go through in the process of litigation funding. And then on October 1st at 1 Eastern, we are having our next networking meeting. This is going to be a little bit different from our normal meetings. We're going to do a moderated discussion with Roger Barton of the Barton firm, as well as a representative of the Developing Partner section and a representative of the Young Lawyers section. And it's going to be a discussion on growing your business, growing your practice, and building a book of business. And as many of you may know, Roger Barton broke off from Sidley Austin and founded his own firm and has been incredibly successful doing so. So he is exactly the guy we wanted to pick his brain on tips and tools and how he did it and how you can do it too. So that's October 10th, October 1st at 1 Eastern. And the next substantive call on litigation financing is September 10th at 11 Eastern. But today, we are very delighted to receive a presentation from Alison of RooksDM. Daleele is a technology professional and Gerwis, the CEO and co-founder of RooksDM, which is designed to alleviate pain points for small to mid-sized companies by using the right technology. He's been a consultant, business analyst, and project manager for everything from small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. And he has a dog named Romeo, who I don't see in the shot, and I'm very, very, very unhappy about that. Before we turn it over to Daleele, I was talking to my brother the other day. He's a psychiatrist, and he was telling me about studies of professionals like lawyers and doctors, and kind of counterintuitively, and you might not expect this, but they have found that one of the best ways to decrease stress, improve happiness, improve mental health, improve job satisfaction is to limit and cut down on the amount of administrative tasks that a lawyer has to do during the day. That is a key, like the silver bullet to promoting happiness and wellness among lawyers. So I'm very interested in what Daleele has to say, and literally our mental well-being is resting on what you tell us in the next hour, so no pressure. Go ahead, Daleele.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I locked Romeo out for this presentation, so you might hear him in the background if he decides to bark as people are walking by the house. But really excited to be here. Let me share my screen. So let me know when you can see it. Okay. All right. Perfect. Yes. Very excited to be here. You are 100% right, Ryan. I will hopefully provide some valuable content as it relates to being able to get more time back in your day so you don't have to do all those admin tasks, so you can take care of your well-being. Really exciting presentation. So today I'm going to talk to you all around how can you maximize efficiency across your law firm, specifically using Microsoft 365. A little bit about me. I know Ryan gave an intro. I do have a dog named Romeo. I've been in technology for the last 10 plus years. One of the things that we do, we specialize in working with law firms, and we do a lot of work with law firms to help them be able to leverage technologies to either automate or streamline their processes. Packed agenda. I'll go fast. I do encourage any questions along the way. You can drop them in the chat, or you can Chat would probably be the best route, but feel free to come off mute as well too if there's any questions that you want to ask as I'm going through content. If I'm speaking too fast, please let me know and I can slow down certainly. But covering a bunch of different ground. So before I jump into the heavy lifting on the technology side of things, I just want to outline some of the challenges that we see that are pretty common across law firms. And then from there, I'll talk more broadly about why the Microsoft ecosystem, and then I'll do a deep dive as it relates to Microsoft 365 specifically. And the big ones I'm going to be talking about today is going to be Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. And you'll kind of see why a little bit later down the road. And then I'll kind of wrap it up with an overview of Microsoft Power Platform to talk about how you can leverage those tools to automate and streamline processes. And then I'll have solutions, real world examples, and then I'll kind of round it all out with where to start. Packed agenda. I'll try to be efficient, but like I said, any questions, fully encourage them along the way. So feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute as I'm presenting.
Just one quick thing. Everyone's encouraged to drop their name, firm name, location, and area of expertise or primary practice in the chat. I didn't want to take up time from Daleele for that, but please feel free to do that.
Awesome. So a few common challenges that we see across law firms. So I'll kind of go down this list, but like relying a lot heavily on email for communication. We also see that email is used as a document repository. So going into your email, searching for documents, a lot of copy and pasting of data between systems. So a lot of law firms that we work with have third-party systems that don't talk to each other, or they receive data via email and have to take that data and put it into other locations. Also, organizing documents is a big one. So obviously you're collecting a lot of data and documents for your clients, specifically around matters. So being able to organize those is a challenge for sure. And then a lot of it has to do with like task management, if you will. So making sure that you're following up on tasks in a critical manner. So forgetting to create those tasks or forgetting to set due dates and reminders for critical dates that you need to accomplish. And then on the technology side, what we see is one of two things. Either you just don't have the right technology ecosystem. So I mentioned the various third-party systems that you would use. So the ecosystem of technologies aren't cohesive with each other, or you're underutilizing the technology tools that you have. And today's presentation will cover a little bit more about that one, of how to leverage Microsoft a little bit further than you may be using it today.
As we say, we will just decide later what we want to do.
So the FCA ones are a bit different from the employer.
Oh, I think I'm getting some feedback from someone.
We're taking both, but we will never take an
Mike, can you go on mute, please? Or Brady?
And as we're realizing, like the lowercase friend.
Thank you.
Like
Thank you.
Perfect. But in our philosophy, what we believe is obviously you can become more efficient with the right technology. So the solutions that we primarily focus on are related to AI, automation, and integration. So you'll kind of see that theme throughout this presentation today. Here was a study that was done, which was interesting when I was doing some research, and I've seen this quite a bit. So 40% more revenue is generated. So what they did based off this study is they assessed law firms that are using various technologies, law firms that weren't, and based off their output from the study, they indicated 40% more revenue was actually generated with law firms that were more tech-centric. And that's very important because obviously technology is the backbone of your business. It allows you to automate and streamline your processes. So being able to see this kind of shows the impact of having the right technology in place and utilizing it fully across the board. So jumping right into, so why the Microsoft ecosystem? Here's another statistic. So over 60% of Fortune 500 firms have a license for Microsoft 365. Why that's important. So I like to call this out because we are the beneficiaries, if you will, for great technology, because if these large companies are using this type of technology to operate their firm, that means that Microsoft's going to do a great job of supporting it, adding features, adding functionality, and having a lot of horsepower behind the scenes. So I run a small business as well too. We rely heavily on Microsoft, and with the Microsoft tools, it allows us to do so much. So not only do Fortune 500 companies get the benefit of the features and functionalities, but law firms of all sizes, businesses of all sizes benefit from that as well too. Here's another statistic. I like to call this one out because it really shows kind of the growth as it relates specifically to Microsoft Teams. So you can see there in 2019, only 20 million users across Microsoft Teams. And by 2023, over 300 million users are using this. So much growth has happened, obviously, with COVID. There's virtual, everything went virtual. So that caused the adoption of virtual meeting platforms. And then as we've kind of transitioned into the hybrid world, virtual is still an essential part of a lot of firms that we see in a lot of businesses. So this is a good statistic because it kind of showcases the amount of users that are familiar with the platform has drastically increased over the years. And to go back to the other statistic, we started using Teams in 2019. I can tell you today, Teams is a phenomenal platform compared to what it was back in 2019. A lot of new features, a lot of new functionality, and then also a lot more people, what we've seen, are able to adapt with Teams today versus back in 2019. So heading in the right trend is what I like to say there as it relates to Microsoft Teams specifically. So this is a slide. I kind of added it for this presentation. I talk about this a lot. So who in here would love to have a mansion? You probably already have one because you're successful lawyers. But if you would like to have a mansion, I can say you already have one. So I always use the analogy of Microsoft being a huge mansion, right? It's a huge ecosystem. You have access to all these rooms. And what we see when we're working with law firms is one of two things. Either they don't know that the room exists in the house. So all these different applications are out there in the Microsoft ecosystem. They might not even know that they exist. Or secondly, they're underutilizing the rooms that they have available to them. You can see here, I kind of added a few different applications, but that's the way that I look at the Microsoft ecosystem. Is every room is a different application and it has different features and functionalities that you can leverage. But the moral of the story is you own a huge mansion. And so being able to fully utilize all of the beautifulness within your mansion is important. And today I'm hoping that I'll be able to shed some light in and around some of the rooms that you may be underutilizing or not know exist today. So why Microsoft 365? So 365 specifically, if you're using Outlook, more likely you're on 365. So that's kind of the entry point of Microsoft. Is the email communication obviously is there. So first and foremost, it's very affordable. So I'll talk a little bit more about pricing on the next slide, but Microsoft 365 out of the box, the feature and functionality that you get with it is very affordable and it's very powerful for the cost that you're paying on a monthly subscription. Secondly, very easy. So anyone can go online, add a new user, create a new account on Microsoft and get signed up very easily. But also in addition to that, these tools are very easy to use. So it doesn't require a full-blown development shop to say, hey, I want to use a project management tool like Microsoft Planner or Microsoft Project, or hey, I want to be able to collaborate using OneNote or Microsoft Loop, for example, on certain documents. So very easy to get out of the box and be able to leverage for everyday things that you would need. It also is a little bit easier as it relates to, depending on where your technical skills are, they do have some platforms out there. I'll talk about Power Automate a little bit later, but creating workflow automations are somewhat simple, leveraging Microsoft Power Automate to be able to set up simple things that says, hey, anytime this trigger occurs, then do these actions. So you can set that up within the Microsoft ecosystem as well too, with very little development background. And then the big one is it's tech that's built to be integrated. So I mentioned this over and over again, so many different applications. Microsoft we view as like the hub of your technology. And then from there, you have these different branches that spark off of it. So you're able to move data in and out of Microsoft. You're able to leverage Microsoft to route data between two third-party systems. And it has a lot of things that you can integrate within the Microsoft ecosystem specifically. So from there, so this is 365. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, but this just shows the different options that are out there. Most of the law firms that we work with are in the business standard. If not, most of the businesses leverage business standard. It comes with all of your apps out of the box. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, obviously Outlook. And then you obviously get the collaboration tools with that. So Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, Exchange. This is actually not an exhaustive list. You can see like OneNote, for example, is not listed on there. So with the $12.50 per user per month, you get a lot of horsepower in terms of the applications or the software that you have at your fingertips, and it has a lot of good functionality associated with it. The other thing that you can do with Microsoft as well in 365, there's certain add-ons. So for example, Teams comes out of the box with your business standard license, but you can also add on like a Teams premium subscription, which I believe is like another $7 per user per month. And that gives you some additional functionality, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So that's related to the licensing. Curious to know if you want to drop in the chat what subscription you're on. Like I said, what we've seen from our experience, most people are on the business standard license. And then, so this slide is also, once again, I talk about the ecosystem of Microsoft. This is still not the exhaustive list of applications that are available. So you can see here everything from collaboration to communication. OneNote for meeting notes. You have OneDrive for file storage and file syncing. You have SharePoint, which I'll talk a little bit about later. You have To Do. Microsoft To Do is a big one. Viva is another one. So many different applications you can leverage within the Microsoft ecosystem. And one of the questions we typically ask the firms that we work with is, hey, are you leveraging Microsoft to the fullest? It has so many applications you can leverage. Are you actually using them to the fullest? And if not, is there opportunity to be able to do so? And how do we be able to allow you to accomplish that exactly? So now I'll go a little bit deeper. Yeah, so it looks like most people, thanks for the responses, basic, business standard, basic and apps. Yep, standard, that makes sense. Now I'll go a little bit deeper in regards to a few of the core Microsoft applications. I'm going to start off with Microsoft Teams. We believe Teams is the future. If not, it's already here. So Teams, a lot of times what we see is people just think of it as a virtual meeting platform. But I like to share, like, Teams is much more powerful than just that. So certainly it has the features and functionalities of doing virtual meetings, both for internal and external people that you're connecting with, but it has so much more that you can do with it. So if you look at this screenshot at the bottom, obviously here's an example of a Teams environment. So within Microsoft Teams, you can set up teams, and within those teams, you have various channels. And those channels allow you to segment different things across the board. So you can see the Beacon Law Firm. They have certain templates that they have a trainings channel, and then you can even segment a team based off client. So if you look at the client's team, there's a general, there's a Jane Doe, and you can segment it based off clients there. The other thing with Teams specifically, if you look at the left-hand panel, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it has these different tabs that you can modify, but the biggest one is activity. So anytime someone pings you via direct message, or you get tagged on one of the channels within a team, or someone posts something in a team, you'll get a notification letting you know, hey, someone has tagged you on this team. So if you click on the activity, it will then take you to that location and show you all of the list of activities that are correspondent to you specifically. The other one on the left-hand side is the chat feature. So that's typical direct communication. So if I wanted to DM Bree, for example, I can open a chat in Teams, send a message directly to her, she would receive it, and we can communicate that way. You can also create chat groups. So like if I wanted to include Jerry and Bree, then I can start a thread that way. The nice thing about Teams as well too, that we promote a lot, is kind of the philosophy of moving a little bit away from email and more towards the centralized communication. And what we see work really well is working with law firms to say, hey, how are you communicating on your matters today? What's the structure? Who's involved? Who needs to be involved? Mapping that out even before we even get to the Teams environment, creating like an Excel doc or maybe a Word doc, mapping out who needs to be involved for the different practice areas, if there are multiple, or for a specific matter. And then from there, what you can do is start segmenting the Teams channel. So then you know, hey, if I'm Daleele and I'm working on a matter related to A, B, and C, then any communications associated with that matter should be in that Teams channel. And then I will see it, as well as everyone working on that specific matter. And so what that does, what we've seen is, it moves away from the siloed communication of forgetting to BCC or CC or include someone on an email thread. It also allows you to be able to quickly go and reference a central location for communication that's happening on that specific matter. And then you have the right eyes on it. So even if I don't need to be involved for a specific comment that comes on that specific team's channel, I might see it because it'll show me a notification. So then I might chime in and say, hey, you know what? I've already done A, B, and C. So I can kind of get ahead and work more efficiently at the end of it. The other one is the Files tab. So if you look at to the right of Posts, there's a tab there called Files. That's phenomenal because what you can do is have a central hub for, let's use the same example. I'm working on a matter, I'm in the team, and then within that channel, I can see all of the files associated with that specific matter. And once again, it just makes it easier and more efficient to know, hey, if I'm looking for a document related to this matter, go into that specific channel, click the Files tab, and then all of the information will be there. It also does the syncing with OneDrive, which I'll talk a little bit later. So then that helps with like the version control. So if we create a process to let everyone know, hey, for our matters, we're storing all our documents in the Files tab associated with the client name, then everyone knows the source of truth for the document everyone should be working on will live in that location. That specific document or documents will be synced to the cloud, and then I'll have the latest and greatest version available at my fingertips when necessary. And then the nice other thing about Teams that we love is you can customize it, which I'll talk a little bit later about. But if you see the little plus button to the right of Securities board, you can add different apps. You can pin different hyperlinks, so websites if you want it to. If there's like a Word document or Excel sheet you want it to pin there so it's easy to access, you can certainly do that. So it gives you a lot of functionality to be able to centralize how you communicate internally across the firm. And like I said, it's really important to kind of think through what makes the most sense for your firm and kind of mapping that out ahead of building out the system, because you'll kind of realize, oh, maybe this doesn't make sense. So instead of implementing a new solution or redesigning an existing one, having those mapped out will kind of allow you to spot where there may be inefficiencies as it relates to communication, or maybe some opportunities of how to best segment or structure things within the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. Some other additional features with Microsoft Teams is, once again, centralizing all communication. So now I talked about like file and collaborating on specific documents. I also talked about the chat feature and functionality. If you wanted to add VoIP, so voice over IP, your phone system within Microsoft Teams, you can certainly do that. You can see it has the call icon on the left-hand navigation system. So once again, being able to centralize all of your communication into one location makes it easier. The one feature I absolutely love of Microsoft Teams is whenever I have a meeting, I know I can go back and easily reference those the meeting chat in the Teams environment. Also, the recording is stored in a central chat for that specific meeting. So it makes it really easy to know, hey, I met with Ryan last week or a couple weeks ago. He pinged me something during the meeting. I can just go to that chat within Ryan's meeting. I'll be able to see exactly what it is that he dropped in the chat for that meeting. And if there was a recording there as well too, it'll be all in that one location. And then the one, another cool add-on with Microsoft Teams Premium is it has the ability to use AI to transcript meeting notes and action items, which I'll talk a little bit later about in one of my case studies. So lots of features, lots of functionalities, lots of way to leverage Teams as it relates to collaboration, communication, both in terms of voice, text, and documents. So great platform is what we're seeing across the board here. And then the next one, I'll kind of jump in. Feel free to drop any questions or come off mute if you have any related to Teams. If not, I'll jump into Microsoft SharePoint.
I actually had one quick question on Teams.
Yep.
You mentioned kind of using it for client matters. Is there, it seems like there's a limit to the number of active matters that you can reasonably have going in Teams just because of its layout, like all the teams get listed in that panel. And so how have you worked with firms that have, you know, I don't know, more than a dozen active matters at one time, so they're not just overloaded in Teams? Is it the solution outside of Teams?
Yeah, so there's different ways that you can segment it. So I believe the limit for the number of channels you can create under a team, I think it was private ones, was about 30. So that was the limit related to private channels. I think that might have changed, to be honest. But no, so typically you could structure it one of two ways. So what we see is they may create channels for each individual matter, or they might just have a client's channel within the team, and then they'll create folders under that channel. So that's another way to do it. So it just depends on if there's different practice types that you have across the firm and who needs access to what. If there's some sensitive information, you're like, hey, I want to silo information for a specific matter, then at that point you might make the decision to say, hey, we'll create most of the matters in this client channel, but for sensitive ones, we'll create private channels and then only add in the people that need access to that specific matter. So you're kind of segmenting it.
Cool, thank you.
Good question, though. Any other questions on Teams?
Can you use it as a phone system independent of the video conferencing? It sounds like yes, but I've never used it that way. Or you just do it with cameras off and essentially use it as a phone.
Yeah, so I believe you need a certain tier for that. You're saying like if you just wanted to call someone directly.
Yeah.
There's a certain license I believe you need for that, but yeah, you can call people into meetings, for example. So like if you were to create a Teams meeting, like if I were to send you a meeting invite for Teams, I could call your cell phone into my meeting. And then it does like a little prompt. It's pretty interesting. It does like a prompt of you are being requested to join this meeting. And then you can hit 1 or 2, I think, to jump into the meeting.
Yeah, I'm just curious, thinking out loud here, whether it might be cheaper to use that and get rid of your phone system.
It's a little bit clunkier from what I've seen. So people will typically just go with the phone system, the voice over IP option. That's a true like phone number that you get, and then you're able to dial out. Versus with the Microsoft Teams virtual meeting, you can just call cell phones. They can't necessarily just call into your, there's no number to call into like a direct line, if you will. They would have to have the meeting number to call into that specific meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
And one other thing to call out as well, too, I know from what we've seen and what we see our clients, there's been a great adoption with Teams. I mentioned the 20 million to 300 since 2023. Definitely in the earlier days, there was friction with getting people to get into a Teams meeting. We still see that a little bit, but not nearly as much as we used to in the past. And so what some firms will do, to be quite candid, is they may keep like 1 or 2 Zoom licenses and just use them on an as needed basis, or they might just centralize those Zoom licenses to let them be firm wide, if you will. So like if anyone's having an issue joining a Teams call, they can then default to Zoom. But like I said, we haven't seen it to be a huge issue any longer as it was back in the day. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is Teams, the app for your phone is phenomenal. So once again, the central location, so you can access every single thing that you want to through the Teams app on your phone. So if you download the app, you get all the notifications for the chats. You have access to all the files. You can make the calls directly from there. You can join virtual calls directly from the Teams app. So it's very powerful when you're on the go and just need to like access your files or call into a meeting. You just download the app and you have everything at your fingertips too.
I have a question.
Yep.
Do you know if you get the premium version of Teams and you want to use the AI assistant for recording and transcribing content of meetings, is it multi-language?
I do
Does
not
it
know that.
like
Actually.
understand? Like if you switch back and forth in Spanish and English, will it work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not entirely sure, to be quite frank. I can check on that. Who's the question from?
Oh, Iker.
Iker, okay. I can check on that and get back to you. I haven't
Thank you.
seen it before, but that's a great question. Awesome. Any other questions? Perfect. I'll jump into Microsoft SharePoint. So bear with me here. It might get a little tricky. The way that I kind of describe Microsoft SharePoint is the backbone of Teams. So a lot of people always ask us what's the difference between Teams and SharePoint. Anytime you create a new Teams channel, it automatically creates a Microsoft SharePoint site. The biggest thing with Microsoft SharePoint is the document management system. So where we see a lot of the value add related to SharePoint is using it to store all of your documents across the firm. It can be for matter specifically that you're collaborating on. It could be for HR documents, marketing documents, anything along those lines. It's a great document management system. It allows you to control versions. So version control is a big thing there, being able to see who edited what and being able to go back to a previous version. You can also set it up in a way where you can add meta tags. So the meta tags makes it easier for searching. And then you can also access your documents from multiple different points. So I talk about Teams, and so I talk about the Teams app specifically. All of those documents live in a SharePoint instance, and so being able to access that from Teams is one option. And then you can see the screenshot I have here on the bottom is that Microsoft Teams channel in my previous screenshot. So I'll kind of scroll back so you can see it. So you can see here, this is called Beacon Law Firm. And then if I go one slide up, this is called Beacon Law Firm. So it's the same exact SharePoint site, just different views to be able to access it, but everything ultimately lives in the SharePoint instance as it relates to the documents that are in Microsoft specifically. The other thing about SharePoint, another different use case for how people use it outside of document repository is to be able to build intranets. So if you look at the top, the screenshot at the top of the screen, that's a sample intranet site. So if you were at a law firm and you wanted to disseminate information across departments, it's a great internal website that you could leverage to be able to do that. What we see if you want to like have a calendar that showcases birthdays and important announcements. And then if you want to embed that with certain hyperlinks based off different applications you guys use across the firm, you can certainly use or build a SharePoint intranet site to be able to do that. So then everyone internally knows, hey, if I need to access all of this firm-wide information, I can go to the intranet site and be able to access it from there. Once again, sharing and access controls you can set up very easily within SharePoint. That goes to the file level as well too. So if you just wanted certain people to have access to certain documents, you can get that set up relatively easy, and you can silo things if necessary. So for example, if you have HR data that you're storing within the SharePoint instance, obviously everyone shouldn't have access to that. So you can create a separate HR folder within SharePoint that segments it, and then only those people have the appropriate access that's necessary there. The other thing with SharePoint is a lot of add-on integrations once again. So you can embed SharePoint lists within your SharePoint site, which I'll talk about a little bit later, maybe as I talk about the data collection. But let's say you were capturing information from an online form and you wanted to store those specific data points from the form into a central location. We can centralize all of that information leveraging a SharePoint list. So it kind of serves as a lightweight database, if you will. But the reason that we like to leverage SharePoint lists is because based off the SharePoint list, what we can do is say, hey, if this field within the SharePoint list gets updated, then run an automation that does A, B, and C. Versus Excel, a little bit limited. We can't really run those automations using Excel document. So we use SharePoint sometimes as a lightweight database system to be able to centralize data and then take that data and put it into other places, which has worked very well for us and for clients to be able to rinse and reuse data over and over again based off centralizing it into a SharePoint list. Any questions there? If not, I will jump into, oh, sorry, did someone have a question?
Yeah, Iker, again, is information on the SharePoint encrypted, addressed?
Yeah, so they have securities that are set up. I don't know all the intricacies, to be quite honest. Our delivery team would know a little bit better than I would. But okay. I know the way that they have it set up.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. The one thing I do know, sometimes what our delivery team will do is they'll get so you can get a signed BAA, which is like a document that Microsoft will sign, just ensuring that it meets certain standards. So if you are storing very sensitive information, there's some additional setup that you have to go through, which our delivery team is more familiar with than I am, but it does handle confidential information as it relates to like healthcare data. If there's PI data or HIPAA related data, clients are using SharePoint today. Awesome. The next one I'll talk about is Microsoft OneDrive. So biggest thing with OneDrive is any files that you create and you're not storing at any place. So if you imagine you open a Word document, you start a document, and you just want to save it into the cloud, that document typically gets saved to your personal Microsoft OneDrive, and then from there you're able to move it into other locations. So for example, if I'm creating this presentation for this meeting and I didn't want anyone to see it, I would open up PowerPoint, start the presentation, save it. And the main reason I would want to do that is because it limits the risk of, if my computer crashes, I no longer have access to that file. Now that document is actually in the cloud, so I can go back and reference it later. And then it's also pretty nice because then I can move it from my personal OneDrive into whatever location I want to. So in this case, it'd be in our marketing folder within Microsoft Teams. It would just be a simple move this file to this location, which makes it nicer. The biggest thing I'll call out with Microsoft OneDrive and why I have it here are two different things. First and foremost, it's the way that you sync all of your documents with your computer. So that's really nice because once again, if you have your computer, you're able to access all of the documents in the cloud and it syncs it. And it does a really good job with the syncing functionality. Way back in the day, it used to not be as great. They've made a lot of enhancements. We don't see a lot of issues at all with clients experiencing any syncing issues. So if they open a Word document and they're making modifications, those typically get synced in real time, if you will. Which is really nice because then you know, hey, all of my files are stored in the cloud, and then I can also access them at any given point in time on my local machine, even though it's the cloud version. So you can see here, I have the Windows Explorer. So a lot of our clients, they still like to access it via the File Explorer on their laptop, and you can certainly do that here. So you see the OneDrive hyphen location name. That's where all of the documents are stored within the Microsoft ecosystem. You're accessing it through your File Explorer, but those documents ultimately live in the cloud, so you can access them from anywhere. And then the other feature of OneDrive that we see clients tend to use is the ability to be able to securely collect documents from external parties. So you can leverage OneDrive to do this. I believe they recently just added it into SharePoint as well too. So we've been migrating a little bit more to that. But today in OneDrive, what you're able to do is you're able to create a secure way to collect documents from external parties. You can see the screenshot in the top is for this demo I put together. So if I wanted to send this to Frank, for example, I would send Frank a link to say, hey, Frank, please upload all your files into this location. Frank would then be able to click select files, add all the files that he wanted to, and then I would get a notification saying, hey, Frank just uploaded the files. The other thing I could also do is couple it with workflow automation. So if I were to send out that link to Frank, he uploads the files, then what I can do is then take those files from the OneDrive location and store it into a processing queue, if you will, somewhere in Microsoft Teams, and then I can also trigger a notification. So the way that would work, Frank uploads the documents, my workflow kicks off, those documents get moved from this folder into a Teams folder, and then I also receive a notification saying, hey, Daleele, Frank just uploaded documents, please go do A, B, and C. So once again, it allows us to not only collect documents securely, but then downstream, we're able to leverage workflow automation to do some of those tasks that you would normally do manually. Any questions there? Perfect. So redundant tools, this is what I always talk about. The question once again always becomes, is there an opportunity to utilize technology that you may not be using? I talked a little bit earlier about going from Zoom to Microsoft Teams. So there's opportunity for doing that, especially through the virtual meeting. Another one that we see a lot of is document repository. So I talked about SharePoint, using that as a document repository. Some of the clients that we've worked with in the past might be using like Box or ShareFile, things of that nature. So maybe seeing if there's opportunities to migrate over to the Microsoft ecosystem, because once again, you get the file storage included with your license. And it comes with a terabyte of storage, which is quite a bit from my knowledge. So you shouldn't have any issues there. And if you need to purchase more, you certainly can. But we haven't seen that to be a limitation at all for people using Microsoft as a document repository. Some other tools to think about as well too when you're asking the question of, hey, do I have redundant tools? On the right hand side, there's Microsoft Bookings. So that's a way to be able to automate the way that you schedule meetings. So it's very comparable to Calendly, for example. So that comes with some of the licenses as well too. So you can ask the question of, hey, do I need Calendly for my specific firm, or does Bookings actually solve my needs? The answer may be yes, maybe no, but it's always worth asking the question there. I want to talk about standardization of files. So this is a very critical topic, and the main reason for that is because it helps with everything downstream. So when we work with firms, we first and foremost ask like, hey, what is your file structure across the firm? I mentioned it a little bit earlier as well too. Depending on the practice types, there may be different file structures for those, but the most important exercise is just, and you guys might already be doing this, but I like to call it out, is having a structure for how you store files within your document management system. And you can categorize it based off different ways that works for your firm. One that I mentioned is practice types. So depending on what type of matter it is, you can organize it based off of that: personal injury, family law, immigration, so on and so forth. And then even within those, you probably have variations, right? So you might have immigration variation 1, immigration variation 2. So being able to have some sort of standard across how you store and organize documents is very important. And the main reason for that is A, it just makes it easier for people to know where to find things. B, the consistency helps, so they know, oh, if I'm working on this specific matter type, I know this is the folder structure I need to go through. And then the third most important thing is we can't really do any automations unless we have structure in place. So for us to be able to automate things, we need to have this structure set up. So then we know, hey, if I receive an email, that email will go into this location because we have a structure of how the documents get stored. So that's the importance of having document structure within the organization setup as it relates to the different files that you're storing. We also say too, create a naming convention for document names if you can. So if there are specific things that you're collecting over and over again, have a specific syntax for that. Good example might be you're collecting passports from your clients. So simple syntax might be last name, comma, first name, hyphen, passport. Very simple, but very consistent across the board. And once again, what we're able to do is, now that we know, hey, if you receive online form, and in that online form they're attaching a passport, and we know it's a passport that they're attaching, we can then leverage workflow automation to automatically rename that document and its alignment with the structure that you have for the naming convention for that specific document type. So I always like to call that out because it's a very, very critical thing to have set up across the firm, and it does take a little bit of time and a few iterations to figure out what works the best. And obviously there's some edge cases, but what we always say is if you can cover 80% of that, maybe 90%, that's great. And then the other 10 to 20%, you can do it on a case-by-case basis because it is still the minority. And then customizing Teams. So this is very powerful. You can see here the different ways and tabs that you can set up within Teams. I talked a little bit about it earlier. It allows you to centralize all of your information to one location. So you have chat, you have files, you can add meeting notes. There's a billable hours tab here. So if there was a specific document that you wanted to, you can centralize everything to one location using Microsoft Teams. It does have the flexibility to customize it, which makes it nice. So figuring out what works for your firm is different for another firm, but going through the process and knowing that you have the ability to do that is very powerful because people work very differently. So being able to have it laid out in a way that makes the most sense for your firm is very important there. And then the last one, I'll kind of wrap up here with Power Platform. I don't know if a lot of people have heard of Power Platform by chance. If you do, it'd be great to know if you want to drop in the chat. But Power Platform is phenomenal. So what Microsoft has done is they have a suite of what they call low-code, no-code tools that you can leverage, which is under the Power Platform. So you can see here, there's 5 different applications under Power Platform. The first one is Power Apps. So Power Apps allows us to build custom applications. Nice. It allows you to build custom applications. So in this case, if you need a user interface, so if I'm an internal employee and I need to be able to interact with the system, then I can leverage Power Apps to be able to input data, and then based off the data that I'm inputting, it would trigger workflow automations downstream. So that's what Power Apps is used for. Power Pages, relatively newish Power Platform edition, but it's really nice to be able to create external facing websites. So for example, if you wanted to create some sort of portal for your clients to be able to see, hey, where is my status? Where is my matter at in terms of the status of it? You can create a Power Pages that would be able to showcase that to the client. It does the authentication as well too, and makes it easier to set those things up. Power Automate is probably one of the biggest ones that we use. So Power Automate typically runs behind the scenes, but when I talk about integrating the various applications that are out there, this makes it possible. So if you think about using Calendly for scheduling automation, and then you're using Clio for practice management, let's say anytime someone books a meeting using a specific Calendly link, you want it to create a new lead within your Clio Grow system, we would leverage Power Automate to facilitate that interaction. So we would say, okay, we know a Calendly meeting just got booked, go into Clio and input a new lead, use the first name, last name, email address, and input that as a contact within Clio Grow, for example. So it allows us to integrate those systems together. Another way that we leverage it, which I'll talk a little bit about later, is just the workflow automation side of things. So a specific trigger happens, we want a series of actions to occur, we'll leverage Power Automate to do that. Simple example might be, hey, I received an email that's consistent across the board. I want to process that email systematically. We could leverage Power Automate to do that, which I have a case study and I'll talk a little bit about later. And then Power BI, if you are looking to generate reports, whether they're internal reports, so you want to see, hey, which attorneys are at capacity, who can take on more work, what are the majority of our cases for the firm, how does it break up based off revenue? If you're aggregating data from multiple different systems and you want to create a visualization of that, we can use Power BI to generate those reports. We can also couple it with Power Automate to automate the process of getting the data centralized to Power BI and then showcasing the reports at the end of the day. And then the last one is Power Virtual Agents. So the ability to create like AI-powered chatbots. So if you think of, hey, internally, you might have an FAQ database. So if an employee has a question and there are some FAQs that are always out there, you can create the content for that chatbot, and then the employee can go in and say, hey, I have a question around this, and then there's an FAQ database that it can go to. Another one's like SOPs. So if there are certain SOPs that you have internally, you can say, you can create the content once again, and then if the employee is working on a specific matter type, they can say, hey, showcase me the SOPs related to this practice area, and then it would give it the response back to that. So to round it out, Power Platform is a very powerful tool. It does require some technical know-how to be able to set it up. I see Daniel, that's awesome. You guys are using some Power Apps and Automate. I don't know if you can speak about how you're using Power Apps, but that would be pretty interesting.
So it's a lot of it is for HR purposes, collecting information and also forms we end up using a decent amount of as well. We tried using it for asset tracking at one point, but I think we ended up using a different solution for that. And then also have some automations that I've been working with, because we also use Dynamics for our CRM.
Oh,
and
yep.
So trying to trigger different things within Dynamics that and syncing over 2 teams, since those dataverses don't seem to always completely get along. And so that's kind of the extent of it. Mostly HR, but probably we'll be doing some marketing as well, because we do all of our practice in separate practice management software.
Awesome. That sounds good. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. We've seen some HR, the biggest ones that we've been thinking about is more on like the Power Pages side. We've been getting a lot of requests to be able to share like statuses of matters to their clients. And with Power Pages, you don't have to be an internal user like Power Apps. So the Power Apps is more good, like you're saying, HR and like more internal stuff. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Awesome. Any other questions, thoughts, feedback? Think we are good on time. I will go through a few real world examples. It looks like we have a few more minutes. So I'll give a few different examples related to some of the solutions that we've worked with clients on. So in this case, this was one that I talked about earlier as well too. So streamlining the data collection process. So this one was specifically for an immigration law firm. They were collecting a lot of different information from their clients. It was very time consuming for them to do that. And then a lot of times they would receive the information either via email, and they would also receive it in pieces, right? So they might get a passport, then an ID, then a social security, then like pieces of data throughout the way versus getting all of the data they needed from the client in one complete package, if you will. So it was making the process very complex. There was a lot of back and forth and a lot of wasted time. And so what we were able to do is create a framework or create a structure that allowed us to use a few different pieces of technology. So the first one that we did is we created custom forms for all of the different filing types. So whether it was an H-1B, so on and so forth, we would have a specific form for that. And then what the firm would do would send out the client. They would send the client a link with that specific form, and then the client would receive it, and they would be able to provide all of the relevant information that was required for that specific filing type. The nice thing there as well, too, is within the form, what we're able to do is set up field validation. So we know, hey, the information we're capturing is actually accurate. So simple logic like date fields, date of birth, things of that nature, we could add on the form. The other thing that we could do is set up conditional logic. So if they selected A for this drop down list, then we want it to show additional fields. So we ensured we were collecting all of the data that we need based off the selection that the user was providing on the form. And then lastly, what we were able to do was be able to automate the processing of the data and documents. So I use the example of a passport. So in this case, the user was uploading a passport. Typically, when you're uploading a passport, it doesn't have the naming convention that you would want the firm to receive it in. So what we're able to do with workflow automation is we know, hey, for this form, this specific field type is a passport. That's the document associated with this. Then once that form is submitted, then take that document, rename it with that syntax I was talking about earlier, and store it into a central location for us to be able to process. The nice thing about this one as well too is if it was a new client, we would be able to automatically create a new client folder and store all of the documents into that folder with the appropriate names across all of the documents that were provided. If it was an existing client, then it would just take that information, find the folder, and dump it into the existing client's folder. And then finally, it would send a notification out saying, hey, Daleele just uploaded documents, please go do A, B, and C. And that notification was going out through Teams once again. So people were being prompted to know, hey, the activity has happened on this specific matter. You can see here, here's a few different screenshots. So the bottom one is the form that we created. This is a demo form, obviously. So you can see the red fields indicate required fields, and then the drop down fields that I mentioned there. So if they selected a different country of birth, we can prompt other fields to show. Also for the copy of passport there, we know, hey, that field is a passport field. We can then rename it. And then the top screenshot showcases the example of now we want to dump everything into a client folder within Teams. And so we're eliminating the steps of having to receive the data, download the data, rename the files, move the files into the appropriate location. In this automation, it does all those steps for you. So you're saving the team a tremendous amount of time. The other thing that it does as well too is it makes it easier to request the data that you need. So instead of going back and forth via email, you can just send the client the link to the form, and then they know, hey, this is the information I need to provide for this specific file. And then, like I said, again, just storing everything to a central location. So it makes it easier for the admin, for the attorney, for everyone to know, hey, all of the files associated with this specific matter are located here that we're working on internally. And then the next one, we talked about Teams Premium. So this is a Teams Premium add-on. So obviously being able to take meeting notes could be a pain. Sometimes what people will do, they'll have their admin join the call to be able to take some meeting notes if that's required. With AI meeting notes using Microsoft Teams Premium, it eliminates the need to do all of that. It's AI powered, so it allows what happens as you record the meeting. Based off the meeting recording, what it will do is it will transcribe the outline of the meeting, and then it will provide you with the recap of, hey, here are all the discussions from the meeting, and here are the action items. And if you look here, here's a screenshot of what it looks like. So it has where it says product roadmap, that's the recording. So you can see you have the recording centralized to one location. The AI notes are on the right-hand side there. So it has suggested notes, and then you can also see the little caret symbol. So if I were to expand that, it would have details associated with that main bullet underneath it, which is pretty nice. And it usually calls out who said it to. So you can see like Serena and Danielle are the two people that were speaking. And then the last thing that it will capture is the suggested task. So at the bottom, it will capture the tasks associated from that meeting. One of the tricks that I do whenever I'm on a meeting and there's action items, I'll generally try to force the AI to know I'm doing a recap. So I'll say, okay, just to wrap up, the action items are A, B, and C. And the AI does a pretty good job with picking up on that. So it captures all of the suggested tasks in that specific area. And this is all out of the box feature and functionality. So limits, there's not really much you have to do. You just have to get the Microsoft Teams Premium license. Like I said, I believe $7 per user per month to get it. And it makes it so much more efficient to be able to capture the meeting notes. And then also the action items are very critical because then it ensures things are not falling through the cracks, and it makes it easier to know, hey, if there were action items from a meeting, I can just go into Microsoft Teams, click on that meeting. Once again, everything is centralized. I can scan to the bottom of the AI meeting recap and look at exactly what tasks that came out of that meeting. I actually did that a little bit before this call and it was extremely helpful because then I knew, oh, I needed to send this person these two things. So it was very time saving, if you will. This is another cool one as well too. So this is using a few different technologies, but in this case, what was happening is the firm was receiving inquiries from a third-party industry website. I believe it was like Super Lawyer or Best Lawyers, one of those. They were receiving these inquiries for people wanting to reach out to them to get information about the services that they provide for a specific matter type. In the case that it was set up, all of those emails were going to one person across the firm. And so that one person would be would either overlook the emails or would just slow to respond to the inquiries that were coming in. So what we did was use what's known as like a shared mailbox. So in the example that I always say is automation@rooksdm.com could be a shared mailbox. And in that case, what we're able to do is remove the silo of that one individual only being able to get the emails. And then secondly, we can then tag on workflow automation. So now that we have a shared mailbox set up, we can then use the workflow automation to go through that email, take the data that we want to take out of it, and then do what we want to do with that data. So in this case, what was happening, there was parsing email out of the information. It was also automatically sending a reply back to the person that provided an inquiry. So with the email that we received, we know who sent it. So no sensitive data, it was only contact information. So in this case, we're just using the email, sending out a response saying, hey, Daleele, thanks for filling out a form. One of our team members will get back to you shortly. So it's meeting the person exactly where they're at, letting them know, hey, we received it. And then from there, what we're able to do is take the basic information that was received. So first name, last name, email address, and put it into the CRM system as a new contact. And then from there, we're automatically able to notify an internal staff, hey, Daleele just submitted an inquiry on the website. Please go and follow up with Daleele manually. Either call him or do the next step that's supposed to be done in the process. So a lot of manual steps are getting removed because we're using the shared mailbox up front to centralize the information, and then we're using the workflow automation behind the scenes to route data where we want to route it exactly. And you can see here, so this is a screenshot. So on the right, that's a screenshot of Power Automate. So the email address is who it's going to, obviously, and we get that from the email that we received. And then the body of text, or like I said, very generic, so we can customize it. Hi, Daleele first name. Thank you for filling out the inquiry, so on and so forth. So they'll receive that in real time is what will happen with the workflow automation there. And then the biggest thing is you're ensuring that those leads don't go missing is what we saw. So now we're ensuring that everything is getting captured because it's going through this process of the workflow automation capturing it. And then, like I said, instant responses. So that's always great. Whenever someone fills out a form, they know their form got seen by someone at your firm. So it makes it more personalized to that individual knowing, oh, this person followed up with me and they're going to get back to me in a short period of time.
Thank you so very much, Daleele. I encourage people, if they have questions or want to talk further, they can stay on for a few minutes. I have to jump for another call. Quick reminder, September 10th, 11 Eastern, litigation financing, October 1st, 1 Eastern, building a book of business. Thanks again, Daleele. I have to jump.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll kind of wrap up there. So I'll share this out as well too. But yeah, that's all that I had. I can share out the deck. I'll have my contact information in there as well too. So if you have any questions, I can hang around for a few more minutes. So if anyone had any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them right now in real time if I can. If not, you can also scan the QR code and book a time with me as well too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Daleele. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.